All right, hey everybody. After the first death, chapter 2. In chapter 1, we met Ben, who is at his dorm at Castle Academy. We know he's not a reliable narrator. We know he seems to be a little crazy as he's tried to kill himself twice, once with pills and once he talked about potentially jumping off a bridge as his dad is coming to visit him. The even chapters completely switch perspective. So we're going to figure out what happened with this bus and bridge. Please follow along as I read. Don't just listen, look at the words. And I'll stop every once in a while and let you take some notes. Just hit pause so you can catch up. Chapter 2. Miro's assignment was to kill the driver without hesitation as soon as the bus arrived at the bridge. Everyone must know without delay that the takeover of the bus was critical and that sudden death was fact, not probability. When Miro was handed the revolver by Artkin, it felt heavy in his hand. Although he had used the small automatic weapon countless times in target practice, but always a cardboard target. Now the target would be a human being. Miro swallowed with difficulty as he squeezed the barrel of the gun. The smell of the weapon, the peculiar slippery smell of oil, agitated his nostrils. He almost sneezed. "You're pale," Artkin taunted, which Miro expected. Artkin had always taunted him, and Miro had learned to absorb the taunts without comment. Perhaps he would not have been able to answer anyway. His throat was tight and constricted. He was afraid that if he tried to talk, he would not be able to gather enough saliva and would somehow choke. "You'll be all right," Artkin assured him, his voice suddenly kind. That was Artkin, abrasive one moment and gentle the next. He had also killed 3 people in Miro's presence in the past 2 years, each of them in cold blood. And now it was Miro's turn to follow Artkin's example. Artkin smiled, but now contempt edged the smile. "After all, you are 16. Miro tried not to show his anger. He tightened. His lips he tightened his lips, kept his cheeks taut. He was furious that Artkin should think that killing someone, who, a bus driver, a nothing, should bother him. Or perhaps Artkin was taunting him again to keep him keen, on edge, and sharp. Either way, Miro was angry. He was not a child anymore, and inflicting death did not bother him. Neither did the contemplation of the act. He had been waiting almost 5 years now. How else could he justify his existence, make his life meaningful before it was taken from him? His brother, Anil, had died too soon, before making his mark, before fulfilling his promise. No, Miro was not apprehensive about the delivery of death. He worried only that he would not do a professional job. Okay, pause. In your notes, Miro's job is to kill the driver. We know this will be his first death. Artkin is his kind of boss leader. We know that Artkin has killed at least 3 people. We know that he's abrasive and then gentle. So he's like super nice to your face and then can like turn around and kill you, like literally. And we know about Miro's brother Anil. So get all that down. Pause. Okay, now I'm reading some more. "Let us review the plan," Artkin said, formal and precise, but the sneer always close to his lips, like Elvis Presley when he sang certain songs. Miro allowed his eyelids to half close now, not really listening to Artkin rehearse the plan yet again. Miro had learned the trick of humming silently, running a song through his mind, and he did this now, an old Presley song without the sneer in it, "Love Me Tender," not like some of Presley's more raucous songs. Artkin did not like distractions, particularly when he was outlining plans. He liked to review the plans the way other people like to play cards, and he did not approve of foolishness like Miro's fondness for Presley music or other American diversions, those television cartoons, for instance, that Miro lost himself in every Saturday morning if a television set was at hand. Miro continued to hum soundlessly as he listened to Artkin review the plan, overtaking the bus, driving to the bridge, killing the driver, waiting for the first message to be delivered. Suddenly, Miro thought, what is the driver doing this minute? Did he have any premonition of his death? Did he know that tomorrow at this time he would be mute, silent, forever still? In your notes, write down how Miro likes Saturday morning cartoons and Elvis Presley stuff. So he likes American stuff. even though he's going to perform this act of terrorism. Also, write down the word premonition, underline pre, it means before. So, premonition is like they have a forethought of that they were going to die soon. Pause it and then come back. Silence fell in the small room as Arkin completed his recitation. Mira looked out at the sleepy street below. Main Street, Hallowell, Massachusetts, United States of America. So far from his homeland. But we have no homeland, Arkin always said, and this was true. Still, Mira was gripped by a clutch of lonesomeness that was so intense his stomach lurched, and he turned from the window. He wished this small, cramped room that smelled of urine and grease and gun oil contained at least a television set. For diversions at moments like this, sudden moments when homesickness came without warning. We are forever homesick, Artkin had said once in a rare moment of tenderness, because our land does not exist anymore, gobbled up and occupied by others. What is your name? Miro. No, your real name. Miro Shantis. No, not this name, not this fake name you have taken, but your real one, Artkin said. I have not taken a fake name. My name is Miro Shantis, Miro replied. Look, this is not an exercise. I'm not testing you. I wish for you to say your real name, Artkin continued. Miro slitted his eyes, studying Artkin, trying to determine if Artkin were really serious about his name or whether he was playing some kind of game. He had to admit that Artkin's face was dark and intense, his eyes brooding. There was nothing playful in his attitude. Miro looked away toward the jukebox where someone was studying the selections. The restaurant was small, barely a restaurant, more like a quick lunch diner, a place for truck drivers and transients. Like us, Artkin said. We never stay, and where we linger even for a moment, we must never rest or let down. Miro's coffee was cold as he sipped. He wished the fellow at the jukebox would slip in the coin and start the music. Something by the Bee Gees, or maybe Elvis. So, Artkin said, patiently waiting, the most patient man in the world, tell me your real name. Miro decided to make his own test and play his own game for once. But you know my real name, Miro said. If I knew it, would I ask you to say it? Artkin said. Yes, Miro said. And why would I ask you something that I already know? Because you are Artkin and anything is possible with you, Miro finished. Arkin did not really smile, but the angles of his face altered. Something danced in his eyes, not anything resembling laughter, but a lightness. He wondered how old Artkin was. 30? 40? It was impossible to tell. Sometimes in the early morning before dawn, waiting in the car somewhere, like that time in Philadelphia when they could not return to the room because of the police, Artkin's flesh would look pale and gray, his eyes like burned out lamps. He would look 100 years old, 1,000. Other times, outlining one of his plans or waiting for that moment when action would begin, he seemed youthful, ageless, eyes lit up by an inner source. But these moments came and went swiftly. Most of the time, he was Artkin, emotionless, a machine capable of sudden, startling deeds. Now the light still danced in his eyes, and Miro realized that Artkin was enjoying himself. A rare moment. If you know me so well, then you must know me. You must know that when I ask your real name, I expect you to tell me, Artkin said. His hands were on the table and what remained of his fingers. The middle fingers of his left hand were stubs of varying lengths, the result of a bomb that had detonated too soon. It's good you are right-handed, Miro had said once, watching Artkin deftly manipulate a knife with his right hand. Artkin had replied, I was left-handed. Okay, so in your notes, what do we know about Miro's hand? Or not Miro, Artkin's hand, how his like fingers got blown off. And Miro says, like, dude, it's a good thing that, it blew off the fingers on your bad hand. And Artkin was like, that was my good hand. Like, I have adapted and adjusted. So something in your notes about how Artkin can adapt and adjust to just about anything. Because if I had to switch, like learn other-handed, that would be very difficult. Update your notes. My real name, Miro thought now. He had not thought of his real name for such a long time that he had to dig back into his memory for it. Do not simply forget your name, but bury it, the instructor had said. Bury it so that it never betrays you. Choose a name that is unlike your own or even the place of your origin. You must carry nothing with you that may betray you, and that includes your name most of all. Miro wondered, what is Artkin's real name? The waitress approached, a thin girl of 18 or so with a terrible complexion, her face like the surface of the moon. Anything else? she asked, pencil poised to total their check. That will be all, Myra, Ardkin said. What did you say? She asked. I said, that will be all, Myra, Ardkin continued. My name is not Myra, the girl said. Ardkin smiled at her. Of course it isn't, he said. But his voice suggested the opposite. His voice and his smile. They hinted wickedly of deep secrets. Well, it isn't, she said. My name is Bonnie, and not the nickname either. I was baptized Bonnie, although the priest didn't like it because there's no Saint Bonnie. Please give us the check, Myra, Ardkin said, voice cold now and uninterested. I said my name is not Myra, she muttered as she totaled up the bill. Myra's a nice name. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Ardkin said. Her face reddened, accentuating the acne and the pimples and the small scabs. Ardkin could do that to people, intimidate them, draw them into conversations they did not want to be drawn into, force them into confrontations. Think about it, Myra. How old were you when you were baptized? 2 weeks? 2 months? Do you remember being baptized with the name Bonnie? Of course not. It's what people have told you. Have you ever seen your birth certificate? Not the thing they give you when you go to City Hall for a copy, but the original, the one that says your name is Myra? You've never seen it, have you? But that doesn't mean it does not exist. You've never seen me before, but I exist. I have existed all this time. I might have been there when you were baptized. Myra. She stood there for a moment, the check in her hand, hesitant, doubtful, her eyes wary, and Miro knew that this was what Arkin had worked to do. Create this split second of doubt, instant split second of doubt and hesitation. He knew that he had reached his mark, drawn blood. Then the moment vanished, and the girl flung the check on the table. You're nuts, she said, and turned away, shaking her head at all the strange people loose in the world. Ardkin looked at Miro. He smiled, as much of a smile as he had ever allowed himself. Miro leaned across the table toward him and almost upset his cup and saucer. My name, Miro said slowly and distinctly, is Miro. Miro Shantas, my real and only name. Music burst from the jukebox. A song Miro didn't recognize, but it was loud and upbeat. Disco, the kind of music Ardkin despised. Ardkin's face again altered, and this time there was almost admiration in his eyes. I salute you, Miro Shantas, he said. Ardkin seldom gave praise. Miro felt a flush of warmth as he basked in that praise, content suddenly. He let himself be carried by the music. In your notes about Myra and how how Ardkin worked to create that split second of doubt and how he was testing Miro this whole time about his name. He wanted to see if he could do what he was supposed to and not give it away. After you take your notes, I continue. The next morning, they waited in the brown and beige van at the intersection of Water Street and Vinton Avenue. The bus was late, but this did not disturb Ardkin or Miro or the others. Ardkin had studied the situation for weeks. He knew the bus schedule was erratic, depending on how long the bus had to wait at the home of each child. There was no central gathering point for the children. They were picked up individually at their homes. Some streaked out to the bus, others dallied. They were young, all under 6. Babies, really. The bus took them to a day camp near a placid pond in Hallowell, where they frolicked and swam and did all the things children did until late in the afternoon. There were 16 children. Ardkin said he was prepared to kill at least 2 of them, perhaps more, depending. Miro stood at the back of the van, watching the morning activity on Water Street. There was not much activity. a boy rode by on a bicycle, trying to balance a fishing line across the handlebars. A dog sniffed at some bushes and lifted his leg and urinated. Miro did not know what kind of dog it was or what kind of bushes. He watched the dog go off. He considered all the things he did not know, how his schooling had been intense and narrow, with no diversions and no time to identify flowers and bushes. Besides, the bushes and trees and other growths on his homeland, but he had no homeland, were different. Just as the people were different. And the food. In the matter of food, Miro felt himself a traitor. He was enchanted by American food, hamburgers and hot dogs and potato chips. He watched television commercials for McDonald's and Burger King and others with pleasure. He told no one about these small pleasures. Anyway, who was there to tell? Miro glanced at his watch. Almost 9. They were waiting for the orange bus to pull up and then for a blonde, plump child to dash from the house to the bus. The last child. Miro was impatient. He wanted to act. He thought about how long he had waited for this moment, the long rehearsal that had been his entire life about to be over. Artkin said, "They're always late. With children, you must play it loose and be patient." No one commented. Artkin was in the passenger seat. Actually, there were no seats. They had been removed to provide room for the four of them plus the equipment. Stroll, the black man, was in the driver's position, hands loose on the steering wheel. He drove a car or any vehicle as if he were conducting a symphony. Miro had seen him careen through the streets of Brooklyn after the post office explosion as if they were on a holiday, without a care in the world. He was usually silent and sullen and came alive only when there was driving to be done. The other man was Antibes, heavy, middle-aged, at least 40. His grimace could be like thunder rumbling, his frown an earthquake. He lumbered through life like a freight car on the loose, shouldering his way through exits and entrances. He seldom spoke, and when he did, his words came out in hoarse grunts. In your notes, there's 4 hijackers. Artkin, who's in charge, Miro, Stroll, look it up so you spell it right. Stroll is the driver, and Antibes, also look it up so you spell it right, is the 4th one. A little more. Miro felt for the warmth of the weapon against his chest inside the jacket. The morning was hot, late August. Ooh, kind of like now. Late August, although Miro was frequently confused about the seasons, too many of them in one brief year, not like his homeland. Looking out the rear window, he saw a young girl walking on the sidewalk, her arms swinging at her sides, black hair sparkling, her full white blouse bright in the sun. American girls. He could not become accustomed to their blunt sexuality, the clinging jeans, the tight sweaters, the frankness of their faces holding few secrets. In his homeland, sexuality was implied, hinted at, not exactly concealed, but delicately veiled. He had been in the United States for almost 3 years and was still both fascinated and repelled by so much of what he saw. So much that was brazen and hectic, loud and raw and coarse, and then suddenly tender, like Presley's music. He wished Artkin had allowed him to take a transistor radio on operations. Miro watched the girl coming nearer, nearer, involved in her own affairs, late for work perhaps, her blouse moving pleasantly in the sunshine, not knowing the effect her body had on people. A year ago, Artkin, noticing Miro's discomfort in the presence of females, said, "I will obtain one for you." Miro had replied angrily, "Don't bother." He did not want Artkin or anyone procuring a female for him. He was not like those who gathered in theaters where girls and women danced without clothes. He hated Times Square in New York City, where everything was cheap and loud. He could wait. But wait for what? The law of averages would settle that question. He knew that he would be dead before he reached 20 or 21. His brother had died at 17 in the Detroit confrontation. The girl passed by, went out of sight, and Miro resisted touching himself. He turned red-faced from the window and touched his gun in consolation. "The bus comes," Artkin said. Miro heard the slow screech of the brakes, and the bus stopped farther up the street. He craned his neck to look through the windshield and saw the orange vehicle 100 yards away. He glanced at his watch. They would overtake the bus in 17 minutes on a deserted stretch of road outside of town. In another 20 minutes, they would be at the bridge. 15 and 7 were 22. Allow 3 minutes for unexpected events. Always allow, Artkin said repeatedly. So within 25 minutes, I will have killed my first man. A man will have died because of me. The next line says, but it turned out not to be a man. I'm going to pause here and start the next one. This is still chapter 2, ending on 26. We are going to start at the bottom of 26 and the top of 27.